primary or not?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what it says.
But no, it isn't. You asked whether we have ability to control how many candidates
Oh,
trigger
yes.
one. We don't have to have a primary.
Right. We choose to have one, but the number, if we do, is set by the state. That's what I was trying to figure out.
So I guess I would just throw a couple thoughts out. And Ms. Juneman has had some good comments. Mr. Nephew has had some good comments. Everyone who's commented has had some good comments. I tend to throw out anything that has to do with whether it's good for the candidate or not. We're not making a decision that has anything to do with the candidates. We're making a decision based on what's best for the city. And the cost, to me, seems to be a lot that we're spending for those odd-year elections. And Mr. Nephew, I believe, had brought up the undervote that we saw take place where we had the primary and we combined with the state primary. And so it seems to me that the people, in many cases, that don't particularly care about the local elections just don't vote. And so I don't see that as a hindrance to the process. And indeed, there are those who are maybe flipping coins. But I think that the people who wish to be knowledgeable about local elections and local politics are the same people, regardless of whether they're voting as a more condensed group or they're voting in a larger group. And to me, it seems unnecessary to pay a lot of money to have very few people come and vote, which certainly is witnessed by the voting percentages that are before us. And so I still think that this is something that warrants further discussion, warrants us pursuing it further in one way or the other. I'm really focused in on the financial part of it.
Mayor, members of the council, if I can also add that, over the last 5 years, I would say, we've had a tremendous overhaul in our election law. State law says that you are required, if you're going to serve as an election judge, you have to be trained every other year. We train every year because, the cost of them not doing what they're supposed to be doing at the polls, to me, is higher than the dollar amount, because we don't want to be Florida or something like that. So that's where the cost of training the election judges has really raised the amount that we spend on the elections, because the majority of this cost is for the training and for the work that they do at the polling place. And while it has been going up more and more each year, it's really due to the massive change in election law over the last few years. Just something that you should know. And I don't think that's going to change either for another few years.
Mr. Nephew.
Are there any other alternatives? I know, I guess it's only sparsely populated cities in the outstate that have, I guess, a vote by mail. For example. But, if we take, 27%, so about a quarter of those registered voters, you're talking about, what, $10 per vote, roughly, in 2009? That would buy a lot of, in raw terms, that's what we're talking about spending. That would buy a lot of postage and mail-in ballots if it was possible to do it that way. Is that anything that's available to cities?
Mayor, members of the council, yes. For a city of our size, though, I just don't know if it's practical or doable. And one of the things that I would say is an indicator of that is this year, this election cycle, was the first election cycle that we had our absentee ballot board in place, where we processed by state law. Now you process all of the ballots at the absentee ballots at City Hall or at the county offices, and it is a lot of work when you're doing the entire city. But we could have teams, and it would be a space issue. There's all kinds of different things that would logistics that would come into that. We did, one of the things, just so you're aware, as I alluded to earlier, Precinct 7 and Precinct 8 are split precincts because they are in the school districts. There's only about 200 registered voters in School District 624 that are in Precinct 7 and 8. We've tried incredibly to draw the lines. As you know, I've had you approve resolutions, jiggering things just a little bit. Now, we are going to be doing redistricting next year again. So Mr. Mansky and I talked about that again today, that what we might want to do, but it's just a sticky wicket, is have those individuals that are in School District 624 do a mail-in ballot. But then that means they're doing a mail-in ballot for everything that's on the ballot. And so right now, our judges have to look on the rosters which ballot they get. So we're looking at that, but you know, it just doesn't feel right. So, but you can do a total mail-in ballot. You also have the authority as the governing body to change the hours that you're open for election too, as long as it's not earlier than 7 in the morning or later than 8.
12 to 12:30?
That might be problematic.
So it doesn't seem like we're talking about a fair amount, but it doesn't seem like we're progressing very much. And so what do we want to do with this, because we're running out of time tonight?
Can we mull on it for a while? I mean, I'm persuaded. I'm strongly influenced by the financial argument, but I think that there is something to be said for the greater attention that municipal races can get when they're not sharing the headlines with presidential races and so forth. On the other hand, I would be interested in knowing more on the feasibility of a mail-in municipal ballot. It could be more trouble and might not be effective, but if it could cost us $20,000, $30,000 instead of $60,000, $70,000, perhaps that could be something in between.
I think it's going to be more because you're dealing with the postage issue.
I think one of the conversations that we had earlier that I think we should, when we put off, while we were served with Julie filling in the roles so that we wouldn't have a special election to have Marv's seat filled, we saved about how much, do you think?
I don't want to just pull it out of thin air. I'd have to go back and look. But then that's another issue too.
Right.
If you do have a vacancy, you will have to have a special election depending on when it happens, because you're going to do your elections every other year. Did that make sense?
Elections are every other year anyway.
Well, what I'm saying though is if you're going to be having your election though with during the federal or the state elections. Of course, if we're doing school districts every year, you're only doing them for 3 or 5 precincts. You're not doing them for all 16. So you would have to have a special election for the entire city.
As opposed to what we did.
As opposed to what you did before.
Where we could double up with the primary.
Gotcha.
Well, then we start going, okay, well, how often do we have special elections?
Well, it's just something that
Right.
that came up, so.
Well, so I think that we should, as I've already said, we should continue discussing this. If we're going to make some kind of change, when would we have to do it by?
Mayor, members of the council, I did get that date, and I'm thinking that it's in March. It would have to be by the end of next March because the primary has moved up.
Right.
But I'll get that to you. I will also get the reimbursement costs from the school districts to help you with your thinking process. And if you would like, I can certainly do some statistics from other cities that what their pros and cons are. If you would like me to gather some information from other cities to see. There aren't too many that have gone to even to odd. The school district is really the only one that has done it as of late. So,
So just to clarify before you go, that you said that 622 is now on even, but 624 and 623 remain odd.
Odd.
And those only affect those essentially 3 precincts, right? So that the
Correct.
city would be conducting elections in those 3 precincts, which meant in those cases, the expenses we are able to charge back.
we would be able to charge back all of the expenses, including some of my administrative staff and my staff's time
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Guilfoyle, if you could go ahead and try to round up some additional information, the council members can kind of run through their minds, the pluses and minuses, and certainly if you come up with something that you think you'd want information about, if you could contact Ms. Guilfoyle so that she could have some time to look into that, and then it sounds like sometime in February we need to either decide or not decide. Decide not to decide.
Which is a decision.
Yes, that is correct. So we'll be deciding one way or the other.
Okay. All right.
Any other comments? All right, then we will adjourn this workshop at, let's see, 6:52. No, 6:57.
7.
And so we will come back for the regular meeting in like 7 minutes.